People always say the deepest betrayals come from strangers. They're wrong. The worst betrayal comes from the person who knows every password, every fear, every dream, and still chooses to destroy you. When my husband walked into our office carrying a box of donuts that Monday morning, smiling at everyone like he owned the place, nobody knew he had already stolen my company. Not a single employee suspected that every document, every bank account, every client contract had quietly been moved out of my control over the previous 6 months. Not even me. I stood in the conference room presenting our biggest quarterly report while he sat beside me, nodding proudly whenever someone complimented the company's growth. Every time someone called us a power couple, he squeezed my hand under the table. Looking back now, I realize he wasn't squeezing it out of love. He was making sure I didn't notice the knife he had already buried in my back. My name is Emma Carter. 5 years ago, I built Carter Digital Marketing from the spare bedroom of our tiny apartment with nothing but an old laptop, borrowed money from my sister, and a dream that refused to die. My husband, Ryan, wasn't there in the beginning. Back then, he worked as a sales manager for another company while I stayed awake until 3 in the morning answering client emails and designing websites for businesses that could barely afford professional marketing. There were months when I skipped meals so I could pay my freelancers. There were weekends when I never changed out of my pajamas because I couldn't waste an hour away from my computer. I missed birthdays, family dinners, vacations, everything. But I believed it would all be worth it someday. Ryan used to tell everyone how proud he was of me. Whenever people asked how my little business was doing, he'd smile and say, "Just wait. She's building something special." I believed him. I believed every word. When we hired our first employee, he took us all out to dinner. When we landed a national client worth more money than I had ever imagined making, he brought home champagne. He celebrated every milestone with me. Or so I thought. About 3 years into the business, Ryan started complaining about his job. "My boss is impossible. They don't appreciate me. I could do so much more if someone actually trusted me." One night over dinner, he looked at me and smiled. "What if I joined your company?" At first I laughed. "You hate marketing." "I don't need to know marketing," he replied confidently. "I'm good with people. I'll handle operations and sales. You handle the creative side." It sounded reasonable. Actually, it sounded perfect. I was exhausted from trying to do everything myself. Having my husband by my side every day felt like a dream. Within 2 months, he resigned from his job and officially became operations director. Everyone loved him. He remembered birthdays. He organized team lunches. He closed deals with clients I had been chasing for months. He seemed born for leadership. Meanwhile, I focused on growing the company. I trusted him completely. That was my biggest mistake. Trust isn't dangerous when it's earned. It's dangerous when it's given without question. Little things started changing. Ryan insisted we hire a new accountant because ours was old-fashioned. He recommended a lawyer to modernize our business structure. He suggested updating our corporate paperwork to make future investments easier. Every decision sounded logical. Every document arrived with sticky notes marking where I should sign. "Don't worry," he'd say while placing another folder in front of me. "It's just routine paperwork." I rarely read more than the first page. Why would I? He was my husband. The father of the child we hoped to have someday. The man who kissed me goodbye every morning. The last person I imagined would ever hurt me. One Friday evening, I came home earlier than usual. Ryan was sitting in our home office. The moment he heard my footsteps, he minimized something on his laptop. It happened so quickly that most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. "What are you working on?" I asked. "Just payroll." "At home?" He smiled. I wanted to finish before Monday. Something about his answer felt rehearsed. Still, I ignored the uneasy feeling. Marriage teaches you to silence your doubts. Sometimes that's love. Sometimes it's stupidity. Months passed. Business was booming. Revenue doubled. We moved into a beautiful office downtown. We hired 12 new employees. Industry magazines started featuring interviews with me. People called me a successful entrepreneur. I should have been the happiest woman alive. Instead, I constantly felt like something was slipping through my fingers. Ryan slowly took over every meeting involving finances. If you stay focused on strategy, I'll handle the boring stuff. I didn't argue. Honestly, I was relieved. Numbers had never excited me. Creating brands did. Helping clients grow did. Money was simply a tool. Ryan seemed to enjoy managing it. Then strange things began happening. One of our oldest clients called asking why future invoices listed a different bank account. I assumed accounting had changed banks. Ryan confirmed exactly that. No big deal. Another client accidentally copied me into an email thanking Ryan for becoming the company's majority owner. I laughed when I read it. What a funny typo. Ryan laughed too. They probably misunderstood something during negotiations. Again, I believed him. My assistant, Lauren, seemed increasingly nervous around me. She'd walk into my office wanting to say something. Then she'd change her mind. Finally, one afternoon, she closed the door behind her. Emma, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you stepping away from the company? What? She looked confused. I thought, never mind. No, tell me. She hesitated. I heard Ryan telling investors you're focusing on family life while he's taking full control. I stared at her. What investors? Her face immediately turned pale. I probably misunderstood. No, Lauren. My voice had become unusually calm. What investors? She swallowed hard. I overheard him talking in conference room B. I wasn't trying to listen. I just heard your name. For the first time in years. I felt genuine fear. Not anxiety. Not stress. Fear. That evening I confronted Ryan. Have you been meeting investors? He didn't even blink. Just exploratory conversations. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to get your hopes up. His answers came too quickly. Too smoothly. Almost like he'd practiced them before. Then he kissed my forehead. You're working too hard. I think you're just burned out. That sentence stayed with me all night. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. As though he wanted me to question my own judgment. The following Monday, I asked our accountant for copies of recent financial statements. She looked surprised. I thought Ryan already shared them with you. He must have forgotten. She nodded politely. I'll email them. The email never arrived. Instead, Ryan walked into my office carrying coffee. Why are you asking accounting for reports? I wanted to review our numbers. You don't trust me? The question caught me off guard. Of course I trust you. Then why go behind my back? Within minutes, I was apologizing. Apologizing for wanting to see my own company's financial records. That should have been the moment I woke up. But manipulation doesn't happen overnight. It's built one conversation at a time until you begin doubting your own instincts. 3 days later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from our bank. The representative politely asked if I could verify authorization for a recent ownership update. My stomach tightened. What ownership update? There was a long pause. I'm sorry, aren't you aware? Aware of what? The representative apologized and said company policy prevented further discussion over the phone. I'd have to visit the branch in person. The moment I hung up, I didn't call Ryan. I didn't call my lawyer. I didn't call anyone. I got into my car and drove straight to the bank. I had no idea that within the next hour, everything I believed about my marriage, my company, and my future was about to collapse. And I had no idea that the one thing that would eventually destroy Ryan's career wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't the police. It wasn't revenge. It was a single email he never thought anyone would read. The drive to the bank took less than 15 minutes. It felt like an hour. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every traffic light seemed determined to stop me. Every slow driver felt like another obstacle between me and whatever truth was waiting on the other side. I kept replaying the conversation with the bank representative. Ownership update. The words echoed in my head. Ownership of what? Surely there had to be some mistake. Maybe Ryan had updated our mailing address. Maybe the accountant had changed the signing authority. There had to be a simple explanation. There had to be. When I arrived, the branch manager greeted me with a polite smile. Mrs. Carter? Please come with me. His office overlooked the parking lot. He closed the door behind us and opened a folder sitting neatly on his desk. I understand you had some questions regarding your business account. I was told there was an ownership update. He nodded. Yes. He turned the folder around so I could read it. My eyes went straight to the first page. Authorized owner, Ryan Carter. Below that, in much smaller letters, was my own name. Not as owner. Not as founder. Not as president. As a minority shareholder. 30%. I stared at the document without blinking. There must be some mistake. The manager frowned. These documents were submitted several months ago. I never signed anything like this. He pointed toward the signature page. There is your signature. I looked down. It looked exactly like mine. Because it was. Every curve. Every letter. Every stroke. My signature. But I couldn't remember signing that document. The manager noticed the confusion on my face. Would you like copies? Yes. He quietly walked to the copier while I sat frozen in my chair. One by one, the pages came out. Corporate amendments. Board resolutions. Share transfer agreements. Everything carried my signature. Everything. Suddenly I remembered. The folders. The sticky notes. The evenings Ryan would place documents in front of me while I answered emails. Just routine paperwork. My stomach dropped. Those weren't routine forms. Those were the papers that slowly handed him my company. I felt sick. The branch manager handed me the copies. I don't mean to overstep, he said gently, but if you believe these documents were signed under false circumstances, you should speak with an attorney immediately. I thanked him, though I barely heard my own voice. The moment I stepped outside, I sat in my car and cried. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just silent tears rolling down my face. I wasn't crying over the money. I wasn't even crying over the company. I was crying because the one person I trusted more than anyone had planned this so carefully that I helped him do it. Instead of driving home, I went straight to the office. Ryan wasn't there. Lauren looked surprised when I walked in. Everything okay? No. I closed my office door. Lauren, I need every corporate document Ryan has filed in the last year. She hesitated. I don't think I have access anymore. What do you mean? He changed the permissions last month. Without asking me? She nodded slowly. He said you approved it. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked directly to the IT department. Can someone restore my administrator access? The technician looked confused. I thought you asked us to remove it. I asked what? He opened his email archive. There. He turned the monitor toward me. The request had come from Ryan. The sender's name displayed as Emma Carter. For a second, I actually questioned my own memory. Had I sent it? Then I looked closer. The email address wasn't mine. It was almost mine. One extra letter. An address created specifically to imitate me. Someone had registered a fake email account that looked identical unless you paid close attention. Ryan. He'd emailed the IT department pretending to be me. My pulse started racing. Can you print this? Of course. Then another thought hit me. How many emails have you received from this address? The technician searched. His expression slowly changed. There are quite a few. He clicked one after another. Each message contained instructions supposedly written by me. Remove Emma's administrative access. Send all financial reports directly to Ryan. Update user permissions. Limit accounting access. Redirect legal correspondence. Every instruction had my fake signature. Every employee believed they were following my orders. No one questioned it. Why would they? The email looked legitimate. I asked the technician one question. Did anyone ever verify these requests with me? He looked embarrassed. No. For the first time all day. I wasn't heartbroken. I was angry. Very angry. That evening I didn't confront Ryan. Instead, I called the only person I still trusted. My older sister, Natalie. She arrived at my house 30 minutes later carrying Chinese takeout. The food stayed untouched. She listened quietly while I showed her the documents. When I finished, she asked only one question. Do you still love him? I stared at the table. I don't even know who he is anymore. She reached across and squeezed my hand. Then stop protecting him. Those words changed everything. For months I'd been trying to explain Ryan's behavior. Excuse it. Rationalize it. That night I stopped. If a stranger had done these things, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police. Why was I treating my husband differently? Because I loved the man he used to be. Not the man sitting in my living room watching television as if nothing had happened. The next morning, I hired a forensic attorney. His name was Daniel Brooks. After reviewing the documents for less than an hour, he leaned back in his chair. This wasn't impulsive. No, he shook his head. This took planning. How much planning? He looked me directly in the eyes. At least a year. A year. For 12 months Ryan had kissed me goodbye every morning while quietly stealing everything I'd built. Daniel requested access to every email, bank statement, tax filing, and corporate record. By the end of the first week, he had an entire conference room covered with evidence. Sticky notes, timelines, printed emails, corporate filings, phone records. Every new document painted a darker picture. Ryan hadn't simply taken control. He'd isolated me. He slowly removed every safeguard around the company until no one questioned his authority. The accountant answered to him. The lawyer answered to him. Human resources answered to him. Even our payroll company only communicated with Ryan. He hadn't stolen my business overnight. He'd erased me from it piece by piece. Then Daniel found something strange. There are missing emails. What do you mean? The numbering doesn't match. He showed me the archive. Entire conversations had disappeared. Someone had deleted them. Fortunately, our cloud backup provider still retained older copies. It took 2 days to recover everything. When the files finally arrived, Daniel called me immediately. You need to see this. I drove straight to his office. He pointed toward a printed email chain. Ryan had been communicating privately with an investment group. Not about expanding the company. About replacing me. One message read, Emma doesn't understand the financial side. Once the transition is complete, she'll step away quietly. Another investor replied, Will she cooperate? Ryan answered only one sentence. She won't have a choice. I felt physically sick reading those words. This wasn't just betrayal. He'd already planned my future without asking me. He expected me to disappear. Like I had never mattered. The more evidence surfaced, the more people started talking. Employees quietly approached me. Lauren wasn't the first. Others had noticed unusual behavior. Ryan had instructed managers not to copy me on important emails. He canceled meetings I was supposed to attend. He told clients I was focusing on personal priorities. One employee even admitted Ryan referred to me as the creative face of the company. Not the CEO. Not the founder. The face. As if everything I'd built existed only because he allowed it. One Friday afternoon, Daniel received a phone call. After hanging up, he smiled for the first time since we'd met. I think we have him. What happened? The former accountant wants to talk. The one Ryan replaced? Daniel nodded. She kept copies. Copies of what? Everything. That evening we met her at a quiet coffee shop across town. She placed a thick envelope on the table. I knew something wasn't right. Why didn't you tell me? She sighed. Ryan said you approved every change. Then he fired me. Inside the envelope were handwritten notes, meeting dates, copies of unsigned documents. Most importantly, there was a USB drive. I backed up every email before I left. Daniel carefully slipped it into his briefcase. You may have just saved this case. She looked at me with genuine sadness. I'm sorry. I smiled weakly. So am I. Late that night, Daniel called again. His voice sounded different. Excited. You need to come here tomorrow morning. Did you find something? I found the email. What email? The one that destroys him. I sat upright in bed. What does it say? There was a long silence. Then Daniel answered quietly. I'm not telling you over the phone. Why? Because once you read it, there'll be no going back. I barely slept that night. I had no idea that one message, just a few sentences Ryan had carelessly written months earlier, would expose every lie he'd told, every document he'd forged, and every promise he'd broken. By sunrise, I was on my way to Daniel's office. And I was finally ready to meet the man my husband had been hiding all along. The next morning, I arrived at Daniel Brooks' office before he did. I couldn't sit still. I walked from one end of the conference room to the other, staring through the glass wall at people hurrying to work, wondering how many of them had no idea that someone they loved was quietly lying to them. At exactly 8:15, Daniel walked in carrying a thin blue folder. He didn't say good morning. He simply placed the folder on the table and looked at me. This is the email. I swallowed hard. Read it. Inside the folder was a printed email chain recovered from the former accountant's backup. Ryan had apparently believed those messages were deleted forever. The first message came from Ryan to a private investor. Subject: Transition Plan. Emma still believes every document she's signing is routine. She never reads legal paperwork because she trusts me. Once the final share transfer is recorded, she'll legally own less than a third of the company. By the time she realizes what's happened, every important decision will already be irreversible. My hands began shaking. Daniel silently slid the second page toward me. Another investor had replied. Are you worried she'll fight it? Ryan answered less than 20 minutes later. She won't know what hit her. She's brilliant at building businesses, but she's terrible with legal documents. Trust is her biggest weakness. I closed my eyes. That sentence hurt more than anything else I discovered. Not because it was cruel. Because it proved he had spent years studying my strengths and weaknesses, not to protect me, but to use them against me. Daniel let the silence settle before speaking. This email changes everything. How? Until now, Ryan could argue you willingly signed those documents. And now? This shows intent. He tapped the paper with his finger. It shows planning. It shows deception. It shows he deliberately misled you. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't experienced since walking into the bank. Hope. The following Monday, Daniel filed an emergency petition asking the court to freeze every corporate change made during the previous 12 months. By lunchtime, Ryan received the notice. He called me 12 times. I ignored every call. Then came the text messages. Emma, this is a misunderstanding. Please answer. Someone is trying to turn you against me. We can fix this. Fix it? He had spent a year destroying my life. There was nothing left to fix. That evening, I packed a suitcase while he was still at work. Natalie helped me move into her guest room. For the first time since our wedding, I slept in a house where I wasn't wondering if the person beside me was lying. 2 days later, Ryan walked into the office as though nothing had changed. Employees later told me he smiled, greeted everyone, and even joked about an upcoming client presentation. Then the receptionist approached him. Ryan? Yes, these were delivered for you. She handed him a thick envelope. Court documents. According to Lauren, the smile disappeared from his face immediately. He locked himself inside his office for almost an hour. Nobody saw him come out. When he finally did, he marched directly toward accounting. Within minutes, voices could be heard through the hallway. He demanded financial records, asked who had been speaking to me, accused people of betraying him. That was the first crack in the image he'd carefully built. For years, employees believed Ryan was calm under pressure. That morning, they saw someone completely different. Daniel's legal team moved quickly. Every document Ryan had filed was reviewed. Every signature was examined. Every email was preserved. The fake email account became a major piece of evidence. The IT department produced login records showing it had been created from Ryan's office computer. Even worse for him, security footage showed no one else entering that office at the times those emails were sent. The evidence was piling up faster than any of us expected. Still, Daniel warned me not to celebrate. Cases like this aren't won because someone looks guilty. They're won because the evidence leaves no reasonable explanation. So we're not finished. Not even close. A week later, Ryan's attorney requested a settlement meeting. I almost refused. Daniel convinced me to attend. Sometimes people reveal more when they think they're negotiating. The meeting took place in a neutral conference room. Ryan looked exhausted. His expensive suit was wrinkled. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the email. Trust is her biggest weakness. The feeling disappeared. His attorney spoke first. My client believes this matter can be resolved privately. Daniel folded his hands. We're listening. Ryan finally looked at me. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I never wanted things to go this far. Still nothing. It started as protecting the company. Daniel quietly slid the printed email across the table. Would you like to explain this? Ryan's face lost every trace of color. He stared at the paper. Then at me. Then back at the paper. For the first time since I'd met him. Ryan had no answer. His attorney picked up the email and read it. Within seconds, he slowly removed his glasses. You didn't tell me about this. Ryan looked away. The attorney leaned back in his chair. I asked you 3 separate times whether there were written communications discussing your intentions. Ryan stayed silent. You told me there weren't. Silence again. The attorney closed the folder. I'm ending today's meeting. He stood up, gathered his briefcase, and looked directly at Ryan. You need another lawyer. Then he walked out. Ryan and I were left alone. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, he whispered, Emma. I looked at him. Did you ever love me? His eyes filled with tears. I did. Then when did you stop? I didn't. I couldn't help laughing. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. You don't spend a year planning to steal from someone you love. I was going to give it back. When? When everything settled. I shook my head. You've been lying for so long that you don't even know what the truth sounds like anymore. I stood up. As I reached the door, he quietly asked, Is there any chance you'll forgive me? Without turning around, I answered, I already have. He sounded relieved. Then I finished the sentence. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. And I walked away. Over the next month, the lawsuit became the talk of the company. Several clients contacted us asking whether the business was stable. I decided to tell the truth. Instead of hiding behind carefully worded statements, I called an all-staff meeting. Every employee gathered in the conference room where Ryan and I had once celebrated record profits. I stood at the front beside Daniel. Some people looked nervous. Others looked confused. I took a deep breath. I owe all of you an explanation. The room became completely silent. I founded this company because I believed trust was the most valuable thing a business could have. I paused. Unfortunately, I trusted the wrong person. For nearly an hour, I explained everything. The fake emails, the forged approvals, the ownership transfers, the ongoing legal case. No exaggeration, no insults, just facts. When I finished, nobody spoke. Lauren finally stood. I have something to say. She turned toward everyone. I thought Emma knew. Her voice cracked. I believed Ryan when he said she approved everything. One by one, other employees shared similar stories. He told me not to bother Emma. He said she wanted less responsibility. He said she trusted him completely. The room slowly filled with regret. Not because they had done anything wrong, because they realized how easily good people can be manipulated by someone wearing a friendly smile. Before the meeting ended, I made one promise. No one here will lose their job because of what happened. Several people started crying. So did I. For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone anymore. But the biggest battle was still ahead. The court hearing was only days away, and Daniel had just received notice that Ryan planned to testify under oath. He still believed he could explain away the email. He had no idea another witness was about to walk into that courtroom, someone who had been quietly watching his plan unfold from the very beginning. And that witness would tell the court the one thing Ryan never expected anyone to hear. The courthouse was quieter than I expected. There were no television cameras waiting outside. No reporters chasing dramatic headlines. Just lawyers carrying briefcases, people nervously checking their watches, and families sitting on wooden benches hoping justice would be kinder than life had been. Daniel adjusted his tie and looked at me. Ready? I took a slow breath. No. He smiled. Good. The people who say they're never nervous usually have something to hide. That made me laugh for the first time in weeks. When we entered the courtroom, Ryan was already there. He looked older than he had only 2 months earlier. His shoulders were slumped, and the confidence that once filled every room had disappeared. He avoided looking at me. The judge entered, and everyone stood. After the formalities, Daniel began presenting our evidence. He walked the court through every step of Ryan's plan. The fake email account, the altered company permissions, the ownership documents, the investor emails, the forged approvals. Each piece connected perfectly with the next. Ryan's attorney tried to argue that I had signed every document willingly. Daniel calmly replied, "Signing a document without knowing you've been intentionally deceived is not informed consent." The judge nodded but remained expressionless. Then Daniel held up the printed email. The plaintiff would like to submit Exhibit 42. The courtroom became silent. He read Ryan's words aloud. Emma still believes every document she's signing is routine. No one moved. He continued. Trust is her biggest weakness. The silence felt heavier than any argument. Ryan stared at the table. For the first time, his own words were working against him. His attorney stood and tried to minimize the email. My client was speaking emotionally. These were private conversations. Daniel answered. Private conversations often reveal true intentions. The judge allowed the email into evidence. I felt my hands shaking beneath the table. For weeks, that email had haunted me. Now it had become the strongest piece of proof we possessed. After lunch, Ryan took the witness stand. He swore to tell the truth. Daniel approached slowly. Mr. Carter, who created the email address that closely resembled your wife's? I don't know. Daniel placed a document on the screen. These server logs show it was created from your office computer. Ryan swallowed. Someone else had access. Daniel nodded. Who? I'm not sure. Daniel clicked another slide. Security footage appeared on the courtroom monitor. The timestamp matched the exact moment the account had been created. Only one person entered the office that afternoon. Ryan. No one else. Daniel didn't raise his voice. So, Mr. Carter, would you like to change your answer? Ryan remained silent. The judge looked over her glasses. You are under oath. Ryan quietly answered. I created it. A murmur spread across the courtroom. Daniel continued. Why? To make administrative tasks easier. Did your wife authorize that account? No. Did employees believe those emails came from Emma? Yes. Were they intended to? Ryan looked at the floor. Yes. Every answer made his position worse. Then Daniel asked the question everyone had been waiting for. Did you intentionally allow your wife to believe the documents she signed were routine paperwork? Ryan hesitated. His attorney whispered something. Ryan finally replied, I didn't explain every document. Daniel stepped closer. That's not what I asked. Another long pause. Finally, yes. I closed my eyes. Hearing him admit it out loud somehow hurt more than discovering it. Because this time there was no misunderstanding. No excuse. A woman in her late 50s walked inside. Ryan looked genuinely shocked. I recognized her immediately. Margaret Ellis, the senior corporate lawyer who had worked briefly with our company before Ryan replaced her. She took the oath and sat down. Daniel smiled. Mrs. Ellis, why did you stop working with Carter Digital Marketing? She answered without hesitation. Because I believed unethical conduct was taking place. Ryan's attorney objected. The judge allowed the testimony. Margaret continued. Mr. Carter asked me to prepare documents transferring voting control. Daniel asked, what did you tell him? I said Mrs. Carter needed independent legal advice before signing. And then, he told me independent advice would complicate the process. The courtroom became completely still. Daniel asked one more question. Did you continue representing the company after that? No. Why not? Because I refused to participate. Ryan stared straight ahead. Margaret wasn't finished. I also wrote Mr. Carter an email recommending he fully explain every document to his wife. Daniel handed her a printed page. Is this that email? Yes. The email was projected onto the courtroom screen. At the bottom appeared Ryan's reply. That won't be necessary. She signs whatever I place in front of her. A gasp echoed through the courtroom. Even Ryan's attorney slowly closed his notebook. He knew the case was over. The judge announced a short recess. As people filed out, I remained seated. Ryan finally looked at me. There was no anger in his face anymore. Only defeat. He whispered, I never thought she'd keep those emails. I answered quietly, you never thought anyone would. He lowered his head. For years, he'd believed deleting files erased the truth. He forgot that people remember. And sometimes they save copies. When court resumed, the judge asked if either side wished to present additional evidence. Ryan's attorney stood. No, Your Honor. It was the shortest statement he'd made all day. Daniel stood. The plaintiff rests. The judge thanked both sides and announced that she would deliver her ruling after reviewing the complete record. As everyone began leaving the courtroom, Daniel leaned toward me. No matter what happens now. He smiled. You got your voice back. For the first time in months, I believed him. But neither Ryan nor I knew that the judge's written decision, issued only a few days later, would not only return my company to me. It would also expose Ryan's conduct to every licensing board, investor, and business partner he had spent years trying to impress. His greatest fear had never been losing me. It was losing the reputation he had built on my work. And that was only beginning. For days after the hearing, my phone rang just after 8 in the morning. It was Daniel. His voice sounded calmer than it had in weeks. The judge has made a decision. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Should I come to your office? Yes, he replied. I think you'll want to hear this in person. The drive felt longer than usual. Every red light seemed to last forever. I kept thinking about the last 5 years, building the company from my apartment, celebrating every new client, trusting Ryan with everything I had, and then watching it all fall apart. When I reached Daniel's office, he handed me a copy of the court's decision without saying a word. My hands were shaking as I turned the pages. The judge described how Ryan had created fake email accounts, misled employees, hidden financial records, and convinced me to sign documents by telling me they were routine paperwork. The ruling said the ownership transfers had been obtained through deception and were therefore legally invalid. Every document that had taken my company away from me was canceled. My original ownership was fully restored. I read those final words 3 times before I finally looked up. I got it back? Daniel smiled. You never should have lost it in the first place. I couldn't stop the tears. For months, I had blamed myself. I thought I had been careless, weak, or foolish. But that morning I realized something important. Trusting the person you marry isn't a mistake. Betraying that trust is. The following Monday, I walked back into my office. This time, no one looked confused about who was in charge. As soon as I stepped through the front door, the entire team stood up. Lauren started clapping. Then another employee joined her. Within seconds, the whole office was applauding. I felt overwhelmed. "You don't have to do this," I said with a smile. Lauren shook her. Life has a strange sense of humor. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "I've had a lot of time to think." I nodded, but said nothing. I kept telling myself I did everything for the company. He looked down at his coffee. "But the truth is, I was jealous." Those words surprised me more than anything else. When people talked about the business, he continued, they didn't talk about me anymore. They talked about you. They called me Emma Carter's husband. He gave a sad smile. I hated how much that bothered me. I looked at him quietly. I thought if I controlled the company, people would finally respect me. I gently shook my head. Respect isn't something you take from someone else. It's something you earn. He didn't argue. For the first time since all of this began, he wasn't trying to defend himself. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I believed he meant it. But some apologies arrived too late. "I forgive you," I said. His eyes filled with hope. Before he could speak, I continued. "I forgive you because I don't want to carry this anger for the rest of my life. But forgiveness doesn't mean I can trust you again." He slowly nodded. "I understand." We stood up. There were no hugs, no dramatic goodbye, just two people walking in different directions. And somehow, that felt right. Over the next year, Carter Digital Marketing became stronger than it had ever been. Not because we made more money, but because we built a better culture. Every financial decision became transparent. Every legal document was reviewed carefully. Every employee had a voice. No one was expected to trust blindly ever again. One afternoon, Lauren brought an old photograph into my office. It showed the day I rented my very first workspace. There were only 4 employees, mismatched chairs, old computers, and boxes stacked against the wall. I smiled. "We've come a long way." She laughed. "You built this twice." Maybe she was right. The first time, I built a company. The second time, I rebuilt myself. Today, when people ask me what the hardest part of losing everything was, my answer always surprises them. It wasn't losing the company. It wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't even the divorce. The hardest part was realizing that the person I trusted most had been pretending for so long. But life has a way of teaching us something valuable through pain. I learned that trust should be given with wisdom. I learned that success means very little if it costs you your peace. Most importantly, I learned that no one, not even the person closest to you, can steal your talent, your determination, or your ability to begin again. Ryan took my company for a while. He took my confidence. He took years of my life. But he couldn't take the part of me that built everything from nothing. And in the end, that was the only thing that truly mattered.